Hi guy, welcome back TV spoilers. In Genoa City, life has a cruel way of moving faster than anyone can breathe. One day looks calm enough to believe in and the next becomes a nightmare no one can name. Just when it seems like the Winters family might finally be granted a quiet stretch to heal, darkness chooses the most vulnerable place to slip inside. Devin and Abby have already endured too many scares. Too many moments where they've had to hold their son as if the universe might steal him the second they loosen their grip. For them, Dominic isn't simply a child. He's proof that they survived the worst nights, that they fought through pain and uncertainty, that they refused to let fear win. That's why even the faintest sign of instability is enough to tighten their chests. And lately, that uneasy signal hasn't come from an obvious enemy or a public threat, but from someone inside their circle Somione tied to Dominic's very existence. Mariah, a woman who once seemed unbreakable, now drifting into territory she can't control, as if her emotions are driving her towards something she never intended to become. Mariah has never been easy to label as dangerous to many people. She has always represented resilience, that kind of strength that comes from surviving a shattered childhood and still choosing to stand tall. But the truth about strong people is that they often become experts at hiding their pain. And when the first crack appears, it rarely stays small. It spreads quietly, turning into fractures that weaken everything underneath until one day the collapse feels inevitable. The changes in Mariah aren't explosive or obvious at first. They arrive as subtle warning signs that become chilling only in hindsight: her distracted gaze, her unnatural silences, the sudden surges of emotion that hit like waves without warning. There are moments when she seems to press herself down, forcing calm into her breathing, reminding herself she's fine, that she's still in control. But there are also moments when she feels like a string pulled too tight, trembling on the edge of snapping. What makes it even more disturbing is that Mariah isn't just battling herself. She's being dragged backward into the kind of trauma she has fought hard to bury. The hallucinations of Ian Ward, that poisonous name that refuses to remain in the past, have started crawling back into her mind. They are no longer distant memories. They feel like an unseen presence whispering into her thoughts, squeezing her logic until she can't tell what is real and what is manipulation. The harder she tries to forget, the louder it becomes. The harder she tries to stand steady, the more her footing slips. Sometimes she can't even tell which thoughts belong to her and which ones were planted. And inside that maze, one bright point continues to burn warm and devastating at the same time. Dominic Bowie. The tender nickname Mariah still carries like a secret, holds a unique place in her soul. He isn't just the baby she once carried in a surrogacy storyline. He's a living imprint of a bond her body remembers even if her life demands she deny it. She felt his heartbeat. She felt his movements. She endured the exhausting, vulnerable weeks of pregnancy with the knowledge that she was creating something precious. People can talk about surrogacy in rational terms: a choice, an agreement, a sacrifice made out of love. But human hearts don't follow contracts. They follow attachment. They follow biology. They follow the quiet moments where a person's body and spirit become inseparable from the life growing inside them. Mariah forced herself to accept that Dominic belonged to Devin and Abby. She told herself she was only the vessel, the helper, the bridge that delivered their dream into reality. She tried to live with that truth, tried to walk away and believe she was doing the right thing. But when Ian's shadow returns to twist her memories, when her mind is pushed into its weakest state, every right decision becomes a question that hurts to breathe through. And that question doesn't demand words as an answer. It demands action. The fact that Dominic is now being portrayed by a new actor only intensifies the feeling that fate is building toward something. Dominic isn't a fragile baby anymore. He's growing, becoming more real, more present, an actual little boy with energy, laughter, and determination. Ethan Ray Clarke's first appearance as Dom makes the child's world feel more vivid. And it also makes Mariah's instability feel more dangerous, because the bond she struggles to suppress becomes harder to ignore. A child who is more alive, more expressive, more visible is harder to let go of emotionally. Dominic becomes a reminder that time keeps moving forward, and Mariah's heart may not be keeping pace with the boundaries she once accepted. That day begins in a place that looks harmless enough: a park, sunlight, an attempt at normal life. Devin and Abby bring Dominic outside because they crave something simple, something safe. After everything they've been through, they want their son to have a childhood that isn't built around fear. They want him to run, to laugh, to play without shadows hovering behind him. Parents who have lived through trauma love ordinary moments with an intensity that most people don't understand. They don't need grand celebrations. A single peaceful afternoon, a single carefree smile can feel like salvation. But normalcy can make even the most careful people soften for a second. Devin is used to carrying pressure like armor. He's the kind of man who believes it's his job to protect everyone around him. And he usually appears steady, controlled, prepared. But even the strongest guardians can grow exhausted. And Abby, no matter how fiercely she presents herself as a heart shaped by loss, she protects happiness the way someone protects a fragile glass ornament with careful hands. Cautious hope and a secret fear that looking at it too long might shatter it. So when Dominic plays nearby and laughs like a child who doesn't know danger, Devin and Abby unintentionally relax for the briefest moment. Just one breath. Just one heartbeat. And in the universe they live in, that is all it takes for destiny to slip through. That tiny lapse becomes the opening. Dominic plays close enough to be seen, but far enough to be momentarily unguarded. Devin and Abby's attention drifts perhaps to a phone call, perhaps to a conversation, perhaps to the simple relief of being able to exist in public without immediate crisis. And in that exact moment, on the edge of the peaceful scene, there is a figure standing still. Mariah doesn't appear like an obvious threat. She appears like someone being pulled forward by something inside her that she cannot resist. She watches Dominic the way a drowning person watches the surface of the water, like one glimpse of light might keep her alive. Her eyes don't hold only affection. They hold hunger, grief, guilt, and an aching intensity that feels too sharp to be safe. She tells herself she's only looking. She tells herself she just wants to make sure he's okay. She wants to see him laugh. She wants to reassure her own heart that he is happy, that he is loved. Those thoughts sound innocent, even caring. But there is a thin line between love and obsession. And that line becomes dangerously fragile when a mind is being manipulated. With Ian Ward's influence haunting her, the tenderness inside Mariah twists into entitlement. The longer she watches Dominic, the more she feels she has a right to be closer. To be part of the moment, to reclaim something she never truly stopped longing for. Mariah begins to experience Dominic as more than a memory, becomes her lifeline. In the days when her emotions spin out of control, when her thoughts feel corrupted and frightening, Dominic is the only constant that feels pure. He was inside her. He was her heartbeat once. And now, seeing him isn't just comfort, it's like a drug she suddenly needs. It calms her, but it also makes her want more. It reminds her of what it felt like to be needed, to matter, to play an irreplaceable role in something sacred. And in that fragile mental state, she starts asking herself a dangerous question: if Dominic is a piece of her, why does she have to stand so far away like a stranger? That question is where everything turns. Because it isn't a question rooted in logic anymore. It's a question that reshapes reality. It creates permission in her mind. It opens the door to decisions that the stable version of Mariah would have rejected instantly. Ian Ward may not speak out loud, but his presence feels like a cold approval, a push forward. A whisper that says, take what you deserve. And once someone believes they are allowed to cross the line stops existing. On Devin and Abby's side, panic doesn't strike right away. It rises as instinct, as a shiver that moves through the spine before the mind catches up. Devin feels something tighten inside his chest, the kind of warning that has saved people before. Abby turns her head without knowing why, suddenly desperate to see Dominic again. To confirm he is still right where he should be. Parents have a sixth sense. They don't always need proof. They only need a shift in the air, a silence that lasts too long, the feeling of being watched. And in that bright park, that terrible instinct begins to wake up. Dominic is still happy. He doesn't understand that the adults around him are weaving invisible threads of tension. He only knows the joy of running and playing. But to Mariah, that innocence becomes a stage where she can move closer without immediately being challenged. She stays at the edges, positioning herself with careful, trembling control, choosing moments where Devin and Abby's attention turns elsewhere. And every step she takes closer makes her heart beat louder, not only with fear, but with an unnatural sense of righteousness. She convinces herself she is doing something good, something protective. If Devin and Abby are distracted, then surely Shuho carried Dominic's the right to watch over him. That is the lie she tells herself. But beneath that lie, another truth grows darker. She isn't just trying to protect him. She wants a moment that belongs to her. She wants Dominic's attention. She wants proof that their bond still exists in a way the world cannot erase. The fear Devin and Abby begin to feel isn't fear of a stranger. It's the kind of fear that comes when trust itself becomes unstable. They know Mariah. They have cared about her. She's been part of their lives, part of their family story, part of how Dominic came into this world. And that makes the threat more painful. Because if danger comes from Mariah, it won't be only physical. It will destroy something fragile and precious, belief. Devin can feel anger trying to rise, protective and sharp, but it's tangled with guilt. He knows Mariah sacrificed. He knows she has carried pain. He knows she isn't evil in a simple sense. But danger doesn't always require evil intent. Sometimes it only requires a wounded person who is convinced they're doing the right thing. Abby feels the same conflict. Her fear is intense, but so is her compassion. And those two emotions collide inside her like a storm. She understands that Mariah may be unraveling because she had to let Dominic go. Because she had to watch a child she carried grow up in someone else's arms. Abby may even feel an emotional debt toward her. But no debt, no sympathy is worth risking Dominic's safety. And that inner battle makes Abby even more tense. Because she feels forced to choose between protecting her child and becoming the villain in Mariah's story. Mariah stands there with a look that turns the peaceful park into something suffocating. Her eyes burn with longing and pain, and inside her mind, the surrogacy memories return like a violent Tidith growing belly, the aching body, the quiet pride, the haunting tenderness. Those memories were supposed to remain buried so she could survive. But now they rise like something feral, demanding to be acknowledged. And when Dominic runs closer, when his laughter becomes clearer, Mariah feels her last defenses crumble. She stops being the observer. She starts moving. One step, then another. Each step feels like a promise she's making to herself. It feels like a destiny she can't resist. But the truth is, her definition of destiny may already be twisted by Ian Ward's poison. Devin and Abby finally notice. Maybe Dominic glances in a direction he shouldn't. Maybe his laughter changes. Maybe the air simply shifts. Devin turns and the world seems to slow. Abby turns with him and her breath catches. They see Mariah. Not far away. Not harmlessly distant. Closer. Close enough to trigger pure panic. In that instant, it stops being a possibility and becomes an approaching reality. Mariah doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. The silence she carries is heavy with something terrifying: determination, desire, instability. It is the silence of someone standing at the edge of a line and preparing to cross it. Dominic remains unaware, still innocent, still drawn toward fun and movement, never realizing the adults around him are on the verge of tearing the moment apart. And then, like she's responding to a command only she can, Mariah takes one more step forward. A small step, but to Devin and Abby it feels like the warning shot before disaster. Because Mariah is no longer just watching Dominic. She is about to make a bold move, one that could shatter boundaries, destroy fragile peace, and turn a family's brief happiness into chaos. Dominic, the child at the center of it all, is being pulled into Mariah's fate. Into a moment where love and obsession blur together. Where trauma and hallucinations fuel reckless choices. And just as Devin tenses to rush in, just as Abby prepares to snatch Dominic into her arms, Mariah's eyes darken as if something invisible has taken over, because in the next heartbeat, she doesn't hesitate anymore and Dominic suddenly turns toward her with a bright, trusting smile. As if he has recognized something Devin and Abby are already too late to stop. On our TV Spoilers channel, I always seek content inspiration for each video by compiling short video clips to analyze and offer my personal opinions. This channel specializes in analyzing, theorizing, and discussing plot points in the Young and the Restless series from the perspective of a longtime fan. Through this, viewers can gain deeper, more objective, and more interesting perspectives. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news about the Young and the Restless series. In Genoa City, there are days that feel almost merciful, days when the chaos quiets down just enough that people start to believe they can finally breathe again. But that kind of peace is always a trap here. A beautifully wrapped lie that never lasts long without demanding a price. And in this fragile window of calm, while Devin and Abby are trying to build something normal for their son, a dark wave is rising quietly from the place they would least expect, inside Mariah's mind, where old wounds never truly healed and are now splitting open all over again. Mariah isn't simply overwhelmed. She is haunted. Not by the romantic kind of haunting people talk about in softer stories, but by the sharp, suffocating kind that clings to the skin and refuses to let go. She can still smile when she needs to, still walk through the world like she's fine. But deep down she's losing the ability to tell which thoughts are hers, and which ones were planted there by the most poisonous parts of her past. And in that cracking, unstable space inside her, Dominic has become the one point of light that makes her feel alive. Yet that same light is also the most dangerous trigger, pushing her toward a step she may never be able to undo. It begins with a text message. One single message at a moment that should have been ordinary. When Mariah is trying to force herself to slow down, trying to keep the storms in her head from destroying the last pieces of her control, her screen lights up. Only a line or two. But it hits her mind like ice driven straight into flesh. It isn't just information, it feels like a sentence being carried out. Like someone is watching her from the shadows and knows exactly which nerve to strike. Mariah doesn't need to read it twice to understand it isn't random. It lands directly on a wound that never closed. And suddenly every memory she worked so hard to bury comes rushing back all at once. Dominic. That child. The baby she once carried, the one who made her feel needed, valuable, purposeful. Now Dominic's name is no longer tied to a bittersweet chapter she survived. It becomes an obsession. A siren call dragging her away from the stability she sacrificed so much to build. Mariah tries to fight her first reaction. She tells herself it's just a message, that it can't control her, that she isn't weak or easy to manipulate. But the more she repeats those words, the more she feels like someone standing in a room filled with smoke, pretending she can still see clearly. The message doesn't only remind her of Dominic, it reminds her of loss. It reminds her of what it feels like to be left behind. It reminds her of having to accept that her life once held a miracle, and that miracle was never meant to stay hers. And in that exact moment, Ian Ward's shadow crawls back into her consciousness like a venomous snake, not needing a physical form to make her shake. Ian is not just a name in her history. To Mariah right now, he feels like an invisible force gripping her mind, tightening around her thoughts, twisting everything she knows until it becomes unrecognizable. It's as if he's standing behind her, whispering that all her pain is proof that something was stolen from her. What makes it even worse is that Ian doesn't have to appear directly. He only has to push Mariah into believing she is trapped, that time is slipping away and Dominic is growing up without her, that Devin and Abby are living a life full of the happiness she helped create, while she is expected to stand at a distance like a ghost. Those thoughts used to be shut down by reason. Mariah used to understand the boundaries. She used to remind herself of what surrogacy meant in the story. Dominic is Devin and Abby's child, and she did the right thing by giving them a dream. She forced herself to accept that truth, even when it hurt. But reason only stays strong when a person is strong. When someone is exhausted, when they're terrified inside their own head, when every night feels like a war no one else can see, even the most solid boundaries begin to dissolve like paper in water. And with Ian's hallucinations feeding the worst parts of her fear, Mariah's emotions start transforming into something else entirely. Dominic becomes less of a memory and more of a mission, less of love and more of need. And that shift is where danger is born. While Mariah is spiraling deeper into those dark currents, Devin and Abby still believe they're doing everything right. They're trying to give Dominic stability, trying to rebuild their life into something that resembles peace. Devin wants to be the kind of father who protects his son from every possible threat, even the ones he can't see coming yet. This is who Devin-ish carries responsibility like armor. Abby, too, is trying to hold tight to small moments of happiness, because she understands better than most that joy can be fragile, stolen quickly, shattered without warning. They are clinging to normal days because they need to believe those days still exist. What they don't realize is that the next storm may not come from an obvious enemy. It may come from Mariah, from someone they once trusted, from someone who has always been tangled in Dominic's story. And maybe Mariah doesn't fully realize it either, at least not until that message strikes the match she can no longer put out. Mariah begins shifting into a state that even she can't name. She stops thinking of Dominic as something she simply misses. She starts thinking of him as something she has to bring back to herself. Her mind creates justifications, desperate and distorted. She tells herself Devin and Abby can't understand Dominic the way she can, that they will never feel the depth of the connection she once carried, that Dominic still belongs to her in some invisible way because he once lived inside her body. And this is the true danger when someone changes the language in their own head from "I miss him" to "I need him," from "I love him" to "I have to have him." The next step is only a heartbeat away. Ian Ward's influence twists the logic further, feeding her the sick idea that she isn't a villain, that she's just taking back what life stole from her. She stops seeing the path ahead as wrong. She starts seeing it as fate. And that sense of fate leads Mariah toward a plan. Not a plan written out like a criminal mastermind's blueprint, but a plan formed out of desperation, out of emotional collapse, out of the belief that she has no other choice. Dominic has to go with her even if it's only for a moment. Even if it's only long enough for her to feel safe again. Long enough for her to prove to herself that he isn't gone from her life forever. She may promise herself she won't hurt him. She may swear she only wants to hold him, hear him laugh beside her, feel like a mother for one stolen moment. But none of those promises make the act less devastating. Because even without violent intent, taking a child away from his parents is still an act of destruction. It still leaves scars that never disappear. The turning point doesn't come like an explosion. It comes like slipping down a slope where every step feels almost reasonable, until the person looks up and realizes they've wandered too far from who they used to be. Maybe it happens the moment Mariah sees Dominic in an ordinary setting, smiling freely, unaware that the adult world is tightening around him like a noose. Maybe it happens when Devin and Abby's attention drifts for a second because they are human, because they need to believe they can relax, because they want to feel the sunlight instead of the fear. And that second becomes an opening. Mariah doesn't see it as a chance to commit a crime. She sees it as a chance to save herself. And that is what makes it terrifying when the wrong choice feels like survival. The mind will do anything to justify it. Mariah will put Dominic in the car. And when it happens, it may not look like the dramatic kidnappings people imagine. It may happen without screaming or struggle. It may happen in the kind of chilling silence that makes it worse. A hand extended. A gentle motion. A child trusting enough to follow because he doesn't understand danger. Dominic might climb into the car as if it's a normal ride, as if it's a harmless adventure. And that innocence will be the sharpest knife of all when Devin and Abby turn around. Mariah will slide into the driver's seat with shaking hands and shallow breaths. But there will be a strange determination in her eyes, as if she believes she is completing a necessary mission. And then the car will move. The tires will roll forward. The distance will grow. And in that one moment, everything Devin and Abby built will collapse into horror. For Devin, it will be a direct blow to the deepest part of his protective instinct. He won't only panic because Dominic is missing, it will be shattered by the fact that the danger came from someone he once trusted. Devin's emotions will tear into rage and guilt, fear and disbelief. He will remember that Mariah helped bring Dominic into their lives, that she once stood close enough to be family, and he will struggle to understand how the same person could now become the force, ripping Dominic away. That betrayal of trust will cut deeper than the absence itself. For Abby, it will be a nightmare in the purest sense. Losing Dominic won't simply terrify her, it will trigger every trauma she's ever survived. Every moment where life taught her that happiness can be snatched away without warning. It will feel like being dragged back into a pit where she can't breathe, can't think, can't do anything but break apart in helpless desperation. And while they fall into panic, while their world shatters in real time, Mariah will be driving away with Dominic as if she is escaping the monster inside her mind, never realizing that she is carrying that monster with her. The cruelest part is that this isn't just a storyline about a missing child. It's the beginning of a larger collapse. Mariah will never be the same after crossing this line, even if she tells herself she had no choice. Devin and Abby will never feel safe again, even if Dominic is returned, because once trust breaks, it never rebuilds into its original shape. Ian Ward, even as an illusion, will become the name hovering behind every consequence. The invisible poison that spreads through everything. Genoa City will be pulled into another storm where every familiar face becomes suspicious, where every normal moment becomes fragile, and where one brief second of distraction can cost everything. And just as Devin and Abby realize Dominic is gone, just as their voices call out for him, and the park answers only with silence, Abby's phone suddenly vibrates in her hand. A new message appears on the screen, only a single line long, but strong enough to freeze the blood in her veins. Because it doesn't just confirm Dominic was taken, it suggests something far worse. Mariah didn't drive away alone. On our TV Spoilers channel, I always seek content inspiration for each video by compiling short video clips to analyze and offer my personal opinions. This channel specializes in analyzing, theorizing, and discussing plot points in the Young and the Restless series from the perspective of a longtime fan. Through this, viewers can gain deeper, more objective, and more interesting perspectives. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news about the Young and the Restless series.